Yes, hello and welcome to the Fantasy Wildcard Dynasty Show. Back again, you've got Ali and James with you this week. Mags is not here, unfortunately. That's because the Chiefs are doing nothing in free agency. But James, our teams are doing stuff in free agency. Your Washington Commanders, are you happy with the first couple of days of free agency? What your teams, the moves that they're making?
I'm not so sure about the actual free agency moves because there haven't been too many. Obviously, there's a couple of maybe slight overpays, but obviously the big news is the trade for Laramie Tunsil, which it's just uh, good to be able to follow a team now that is able to make these moves, push the chips to try and win now, and actually it be a realistic thing and it not just be just a flash in the pan. Obviously, with James Daniels on that rookie contract, they're trying to get creative and spend their cap space in different ways rather than just blowing it on overpaying some free agents. So it's good to see be able to follow a team that is now making these moves, and there's something for me to actually keep track of rather than it just being what have they done now. How about you with your Bucks?
Yeah, I mean, we're notoriously a team that don't make big splashes, and I think we've really sort of carried on the theme. Although I am very happy with re-signing Godwin, and then Hassan Reddick coming in as a pass rusher is someone that we really needed. Obviously not fancy relevant, but I think it's probably worth the risk at 14 million or 12 million guaranteed. I think that's a decent quality, low risk sign in. Hopefully it pays off because he's usually a double digit sack artist. Other than that, I think keeping the offensive line together, so re-signing Benton Bredesen fairly cheap compared to what a lot of the guards have got on the free agent market has been really good, especially if you're thinking about Bucky Irving and this run game. I think that is going to be continuing into 2025. Luckily, we didn't re-sign. Did you see the tweet about Samaje Perine to the Buccaneers for like 22 million? I was like, what?
One, wasn't it?
I was like, what the hell is that? Thank God that didn't come to fruition. But yeah, other than that, really happy so far. And yeah, I just love seeing the Commanders. You're a relevant team now, and I think you're, especially when you look at the likes of the Eagles, they're losing a lot of their players. The Cowboys are sitting there not doing anything apart from a long snapper or some weird position they signed yesterday. And the Giants, obviously, their moves that they're making, but they're struggling with no quarterback currently. So really excited about your Commanders in 2025.
Same.
And yeah, we are here to react to the big free agent signings, the moves that technically aren't official until tomorrow on Wednesday, but there's been some big names move teams, sign with new teams, or re-sign with their current team. So we've selected 9 players, 3 quarterback, we've got 3 wide receiver, and then I think we've got 3 running backs at the end. We'll start at the quarterback position. James, you've got one of the big quarterbacks that changed teams. I personally really like this move. Are you in agreement with me?
So we're going to talk about Geno Smith. He is one of my favourite players ever since he sort of had his comeback a few years ago. Just really like the way he plays. Obviously, this was a trade. It's a 3rd round pick to the Raiders. I think it's probably a move that, in dynasty perspective anyway, it makes more of a difference for the players on his team than it does Geno. I mean, obviously, we were kind of expecting that he would get a new deal from the Seahawks, and instead he's basically just going to get this new deal on a different team. It's probably a bigger deal for the likes of Brock Bowers. So obviously Brock Bowers is clearly the tight end one in dynasty anyway, but it just means we can be a bit more confident in him over the next couple of years with Geno there than whoever they've had a quarterback before, like Gardner Minshew, Aidan O'Connell. And we didn't really know what way they were going to go, whether they were going to take a rookie, how would that go? So, it means we can be more confident in Bowers. Maybe we'll see him score some more touchdowns in 2025. I think he only had 5, which is not terrible, but you kind of want to see that jump up a bit. Also like the move for Jacoby Myers. I think he's a really underrated fantasy receiver, and I think with a quarterback like Geno, and there's no other outside of Bowers, there's not really anyone else on that offense. I think he's a startable wide receiver 3 every week. He's probably pretty cheap in Dynasty. So yeah, for Geno, it's good to get the stability of the new contract, which he hasn't actually signed yet. I think he can't do it until tomorrow. But yeah, we kind of assumed he's going to be around for another couple of years. There's enough teams out there that are quarterback needy. It's obviously just not in Seattle instead. Now it's in Vegas. He's probably a back end QB2. Really, yeah, he's around that 20, 26 range. That you could put him anywhere around there, really. But I think I'm happy with him as a weekly starter in my Superflex team, to be honest. As long as you've got one of those top tier QB1s. Over the last 3 seasons, he's a QB19's his lowest finish, and I think he missed a game or 2 that year. QB6 in 2022, QB14 last year. So yeah, you're pretty happy with him as that second quarterback for you on a weekly basis, and it now just means we know we've got that security with him for another couple of years. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, similarly, to be honest, I really like Geno Smith. I think he's forever been underrated, and as you mentioned, with those figures there, 2022, the quarterback 6, he's been a quarterback 2 or better the last 3 years, and I think he's always been ranked lower than that. And a lot of people think that this would be his final year. This will be his final year. A lot of people thought that this in 2024 would be his final year, but he's obviously found himself a new home in Las Vegas that seemed to be reborn with, the new coaching staff, Pete Carroll. You've got Tom Brady in the background as well. So yeah, I think it's a great move. Someone that I'm quite interested in. I think he's a perfect sort of quarterback 2, as you mentioned, quarterback 2, quarterback 3 fringe. So I think it allows you to have perhaps a more riskier quarterback 3, the likes of, I don't know, Anthony Richardson, although that doesn't look great right now. Something we'll discuss later. But I think it allows you to have a riskier upside quarterback 3, and then having Geno Smith as that stable quarterback 2. Giving you, quite often giving you quarterback 1, points week in, week out. Always finishing as a solid quarterback 2. You look at the draft, and they're constantly mocked with Ashton Janty to the Raiders now. I think, is it pick 6 or pick 7 that the Raiders have? I think that's early for running back, but obviously Ashton Janty is amazing. They're sort of beefing up their O-line. You got to think that Pete Carroll's going to want to run the ball and be a run-first offense. I really like Geno Smith. I still think that even with this new deal, his value's not going to shoot up in Dynasty, and therefore I think, without looking at the contract, it could be a contract where it's sort of front-loaded, where they can, have him for this year and then get out a little bit cheap next year. We'll have to find out about that because we've not seen it yet. But perhaps if he's there for, the money's set where he's there for this year and next year, someone that I could be interested in trading for as that quarterback 2, quarterback 3 on my team. And I don't think you're going to have to give up too much. And, a lot of people are really raving about this rookie class, but really, if you're at the back end of round 1, that could be an interesting spot where if you need a quarterback, I'd be happy to pay that sort of price for Geno Smith and have a quarterback 2 for the next couple of years. So yeah, that is definitely one of the bigger moves. I'm going to talk about Justin Fields to the New York Jets. Very, very fantasy relevant quarterback when on the field. That's always been the gripe about Justin Fields. Very, very productive. No matter what team he's played for, it's just, is he really, a great quarterback? Can he secure a quarterback position? Obviously, there's only 32 of them in the league, and he's done okay. As last year with the Pittsburgh Steelers, 6 starts with Pittsburgh, 10 touchdowns, 1 interception. So when you look at that that's decent quarterback play. He had a 4-2 record. I personally think that he was unlucky to be benched. They obviously had Russell Wilson that they wanted to have as their starter. He was injured, and then when he was healthy, they stuck to it and put him in there. Maybe they regret that now. But look at Justin Fields. I think he could be the biggest winner of free agency as a whole. Certainly going to be the best weapons that he's ever played with. Obviously, outside of college at Ohio State, he had a rather loaded wide receiver core there. And then looking at what he was able to do last year, quarterback 6 through those first 6 games before he was benched, 19.1 points per game. So he was really, really relevant. That was higher than Jalen Hurts, Jordan Love, Patrick Mahomes, Jared Goff. The list goes on. Really good start to the season. But the deal he's signed is at 30 million guaranteed with 20 million for the first year. Essentially, it's a 1 and a bit year deal, so they can easily get out of that after 1 year. So they're obviously going to evaluate their position in 2026 to see whether there's a rookie that they're going to go for. Are they in a position, or go for another veteran, or perhaps Justin Fields plays his way into that job where they can extend him into 2026 and beyond. Who knows? Obviously, reuniting with Garrett Wilson, that is a positive. And I've seen in the mock drafts that they are constantly mocked with Tyler Warren, which I think would be another great weapon for Justin Fields as a big tight end target. But yeah, certainly for Fields' value, this is a huge move. I prefer this move to Pittsburgh, I think. And he is now, I've moved him up a couple of spots in my rankings. Quarterback 25 in Dynasty. I'd like to move him up just because, whenever he plays, he's a quarterback 1 in terms of fantasy points. But it's just difficult because is it going to be another one and done year for Justin Fields? Who knows? It's just a bit too many question marks there to put him up any higher. But look at the options. You've got Garrett Wilson there. A lot of people are really, really down on Garrett Wilson now because of the move. I actually think that he's going to be hyper-targeted by Justin Fields. You saw DJ Moore have a really good season with Justin Fields in Chicago. It's not the same type of receiver. It's not the same offense. But they've played together. They've got that connection. And Garrett Wilson is a great wide receiver. He's sort of elite light, I call him, because I don't think he's quite elite, but he's certainly, close to the top tier. And then when you look around, Davante Adams is gone. There's not much competition for targets. So, really don't mind Garrett Wilson. Perhaps is potentially a buy for me, with people being down about him. So how do you feel about this move, James?
Yeah, I kind of agree with you that it's in terms of all the quarterback moves, it's probably the one that is the most significant for the value of the quarterback in a positive way. Because we're talking about Justin Fields, who last year was on for half the season at least, was sitting on the bench. And you think back to last off season, it seemed like no one wanted him. Like, I think the Bears were shopping him for a while. I can't even remember. Did he get traded, or did they cut him in the end? I guess it was a trade, right? But I can't even remember what happened. It just went on for so long, didn't it? That kind of no one was really interested. So you could see if there was a sort of potential situation where this off season it was still there, and he was given a contract where you could see him being kind of just a very short leashed sort of bridge quarterback. But I think now with the landing spot with the Jets and sort of the contract he's got, you kind of know that he's going to start the whole season. And that obviously means wonders for his dynasty value, and maybe even, like you said, he could even play himself into the role longer term. And we didn't know that was going to be a possibility for Justin Fields. So it's definitely a positive. I would be a bit nervous for what it means for the rest of the Jets offense, but there's obviously reason to be optimistic as well. That Garrett Wilson's there, and obviously Breece Hall there as well, and maybe they can add someone in the draft. So there are weapons there. It's just we just haven't really seen it with the Jets. It's just been such a frustrating offense to watch for the last few years. And someone like Justin Fields, who's a free agent, I don't know if he's the answer, but it's definitely reasons to be optimistic for Fields and for the rest of the offense. We just have to. For me personally, I just want to see it first before I kind of buy in.
Yeah, agreed. I think it could go either way. I think it's kind of one of them sort of Baker Mayfield sort of prove it years that he had with the Bucs. Yeah. Played well enough to earn himself that sort of $100 million contract. It could happen. I think it's probably the most unlikely scenario. I could also see, could they even draft Shedeur Sanders at number, I don't know what pick they got, 7, 9, something like that. Could they 10. Draft? Yeah, 10. It wouldn't surprise me either. So I think money-wise, I think that probably says that he is the starter this year.
Yeah.
Unless they really like Sanders in the draft and think that he's not going to slip, then he does, whatever. But yeah, Breece Hall, it's difficult on Breece Hall because you think Breece Hall is like a top 5 dynasty running back. You struggled last year. I'm not quite sure. I think it's slight negative on Breece Hall, but on the whole, still pretty positive about that. And, it just adds another element to their offense, having to contain Fields as well as Breece Hall in the run game. So we'll talk about another quarterback that has landed on a big contract on a new team, James. Sam Darnold. He was destined for the Seattle Seahawks. I don't think there was any other landing spot for him, but he has landed there. How do you assess Sam Darnold's new landing spot?
Yes, as you say, he was destined for the Seahawks as soon as that Geno trade went through. I mean, the news came out pretty quickly, didn't it? That they were interested in Darnold, and it's a weird move for the Seahawks. It feels weird anyway, without knowing the full details. To go from Geno to Darnold, it's a bit lateral, isn't it? It's not a big upgrade. I know he's significantly younger. I think he's about 7 years younger. So maybe that's a factor. And then I've seen, obviously, it's not just going from one quarterback to the other. They've also got that draft pick that they got for Geno to add into the mix. So I guess, and the money, maybe they signed him for a bit cheaper than Geno, or they offered Geno the same contract, I think. But he's basically got the deal that Baker got last year at the Bucs, right? So he's had that one season where he's bounced back, he's proved it, and then he's got the Baker deal. I just feel like with Baker, we had a bit more. We've seen it a bit longer to know that there was just more longer term stability there. So obviously, Darnold's got this deal, and what is it, 3-year deal? And I think it really is probably a 2-year deal, and they can get out after a year. But I'm not personally convinced that he will be the starter after this year. Definitely, obviously, this year he's a Seahawks starter. But there are scenarios where it doesn't go well for him, and they have to move on after a year. Whereas with the deal that Baker got and things like that, and even with Geno, we've just seen it a bit more. So there's more. Yeah, we just got more confidence in it. And then in terms of the actual landing spot for Darnold himself, again, it's going to impact his dynasty value too much because we all knew he was going to get a deal for 2 or 3 years. It was a question of was that the Vikings or was it somewhere else? And it became quite clear that it wasn't going to be the Vikings because they got JJ McCarthy. So that meant that he wasn't going to ever get a landing spot that as good a situation as the Vikings. Obviously, they got some great weapons, a wide receiver, tight end, and he's never going to find a landing spot with those weapons. But more importantly, it's Kevin O'Connell, and there weren't any other than maybe the Rams, which looked like a bit of a potential at one point with Stafford potentially moving on. There was never going to be a scheme that he would arrive on where you would just have the confidence that the coach can carry him through. The Seahawks have got some big holes in their offensive line, and I think the way that Geno plays is different to Darnold, and he was able to mask them a bit. So there's all these things coming out about how Geno was one of the fastest in the league in terms of time to throw, and Darnold was at the other end. So with the issues on the interior offensive line, that's something that I don't know how they're going to fix that with Darnold there. And then we all know what the ghosts that Darnold sees when he does get pressured. So yeah, it's a bit meh in terms of Darnold's value. It's one of those where we might be saying we spoke about this a few weeks ago. I think it was in my first show that Darnold is a sell. As soon as he gets this new deal, you want to sell him. But I think it's probably best and it makes more sense to hold on to him until people actually need to be setting lineups, until the season starts and they're looking for a quarterback that they can start each week. Because I don't think anyone's going to be too excited by this deal because it's kind of expected and the landing spot. So once people are setting their lineups, maybe they're going to be, Darnold's there, he's starting for a couple of years. I need to pay for him now, rather than at the moment, there's just a bit people are going to be waiting to see what happens with the rookies, and there's still a couple of other quarterbacks that need to sign in there. So yeah, it doesn't really do much for me in terms of value. But yeah, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, an interesting one. Obviously, keep trade cut is fairly up to date, but I don't think it's caught up fully. I think looking at the difference between Sam Darnold and Geno Smith, Sam Darnold is quarterback 23, Geno Smith is quarterback 30. So that is interesting to me. I thought there'd probably be a lot closer to that.
Just age, isn't it?
Yeah, it's 6.5 years, so there's a lot there. But I mean, in 6 years, is Sam Darnold going to be a starter in the league? You certainly can't guarantee it. And as you mentioned, even in next year, would you say with full confidence that he's going to be the starter? When you look at some of the teams that are leaving massive amount of money, with the likes of Kirk Cousins benching him, leaving, after signing a $100 million contract. They're not afraid to do that anymore, especially with the cap going up by what it does every year. So yeah, I think I did actually get asked from someone this week, but it must have been yesterday actually, about they were offered the 202 for their Sam Darnold, and I said, well, do you need to get rid of him straight away? If he's your quarterback 3, you're just creating another hole for yourself. He is a starter, and I do think that with a couple of good games under his belt, that he's probably going to be worth, more than that. You can probably get a first for him if you wanted to sell at that point. So yeah, I think you're right. I think he's a hold. It's probably one of the worst spots that he could have gone for. It's, still Seattle. They were a decent team. I think they won 10 games last year, but they have got big O-line issues, as you mentioned. They haven't got the same wide receiver core that they've got. JSN is there, but JSN was, probably the one last year. So losing DK, Tyler Lockett leaving as well. Yeah, there's certainly big question marks, and I just don't see it ending that great for Sam Darnold. I think he's going to be fine for this year. Probably a back end quarterback too. And for JSN, I think it's very much a lateral move. I think he was on a trajectory where he was always going to be really good this year in 2025. They were focusing on him being the wide receiver 1. He took that last year, looked great. But obviously now Sam Darnold is a fine quarterback. He can sustain JSN as a wide receiver 1, which I think he will be, especially now that DK's not there. So yeah, it's a lateral move, I think, and he's definitely a hold, because I don't think many people are out there trying to buy Sam Darnold right now. So we'll move on to, as we just mentioned there, wide receivers, and I'll talk about DK Metcalf, because I guess it's the big one in terms of the money that was changed hands. It was DK Metcalf traded to the Pittsburgh Steelers, one that took me by surprise, to be honest. Second round pick 52, traded from Pittsburgh, and then he signed a 5-year, $150 million contract, which on the face of it seems really high. We know the talent for DK Metcalf has always been there. That's been unquestioned, to be honest. He's showed flashes of being one of the very best wide receivers in all of the NFL. But then sometimes, for me, he just goes wandering. He disappears. For someone that is so big, so athletic, he should be absolutely dominating. And for whatever reason, he's not quite done it for me. And I put a tweet out a few days ago before free agency kicked off. It was probably when he announced that he wanted to trade. He wanted to move teams, and just put up his fantasy finishes the last 5 years. So when he came into the league and absolutely smashed it, in 2020 he was the wide receiver 7 at 17 points per game. 2021 wide receiver 14. That was fine. But then every year since, that has dropped. So wide receiver 16, wide receiver 21, around about the 13, 14 point mark. And then last year was his statistically his worst year at wide receiver 32, 12.7 points per game. His ADP up at wide receiver 19. So, I said, has he been a bit of a bust, to be honest? Because, all the talent that he's got, I have to say that, I've got him on a couple of teams, and it's difficult to know exactly what to do with him because you're putting him out there, paid a heavy price for him in both situations. And, you kind of thought that from his rookie season, year 2, that he was really going to kick on and become an elite wide receiver, that he was ranked right up there for Dynasty. And now he's really jumped down. I'll just bring up his current ranking. Obviously, with 22 on Keep Trade Cut, he's now 27. So this will probably be his big payday, taking him up to 32 years old if he stays in that deal. And I just think it's a weird one. I think we said before the show, it's a bit of a weird landing spot. Obviously, the Pittsburgh Steelers crying out for another wide receiver. George Pickens is there, and again, a bit like DK Metcalf, he likes a punch up with anyone on the field. To be honest, it's going to be fun to watch from a spectator point of view. But in terms of just fantasy point of view, it's a strange one. It could look back in a couple of years and say, that was value getting DK Metcalf there just for a second round pick, and giving him that contract that will probably look good in a couple of years if he becomes their wide receiver 1. But at the minute, as we record this on Tuesday evening, they've not got themselves a quarterback. So it is an odd one to try and evaluate. He's not someone that I really, really like in Dynasty. And I've always sort of thought that JSN was going to kick on ahead of him. And that was the case last year. This year, it is a difficult one without the quarterback. And probably I'm guessing Aaron Rodgers is between the Steelers and the Giants. We hear for Aaron Rodgers. If he does end up in Pittsburgh, I think a lot of people will probably like that for DK Metcalf, for George Pickens if he stays around. So perhaps I'm sort of leaning towards the sell for DK Metcalf if I can get sort of wide receiver 16, 17 prices. There's a few wide receivers ahead of him, like Zay Flowers, that I like the look of. If I can get Rashee Rice, take advantage of his situation. Roma Dunze, I really like him. He's ranked ahead. T. Higgins, again, is sort of stuck in Cincinnati for another year. If I can put a little bit on top and get Garrett Wilson, with people being down on him, that's a move that I'd probably make happen if I can with DK. What's your feelings on DK moving to the Steelers?
Yeah, so as you sort of said, it's hard to have a full opinion on it until we know the quarterback situation. It seems like it's going to be a short-term thing, right? So Aaron Rodgers, or I don't even know what the other options would be, to be honest with you. But maybe they end up waiting out and they end up getting Kirk Cousins or on like a minimum deal like they did with Russell Wilson last year. But yeah, he's, as a player or as a fantasy asset, it's frustration, isn't it? You watch him play sometimes, and he's the most athletic, physical player on the field. He should be taking over games every week, and sometimes he does. But yeah, sometimes he's certainly not putting anything up for you in fantasy, and it just it's frustrating. And like I said, I've got him in a couple of places on teams that I view as like really strong contending teams. And when you get to the last stages and you're in the playoffs and things like that, you can't afford to have your wide receiver 2 just putting up a dud for you. So yeah, it's a frustrating one. And the Steelers are crying out for a long-term solution at quarterback. It doesn't seem like that's going to happen, but we'll have to wait and see. So it's hard for me to really buy in on Metcalf again. Another one that I'm not fully sold on until we know exactly what the quarterback situation is. But yeah, with Pickens there as well, I'd imagine in a couple of years there's only Metcalf on the roster and Pickens is somewhere else. You can't really deal with have 2 players that are both going to divas, I guess is the term, on the roster, and it go well, and at some point Mike Tomlin's going to make a call and it will be Pickens will be gone. I imagine when his contract's up he'll be moving on. But it's like you said, if you can get a little bit high on him, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I think it's full agreement for DK Metcalf. At 27 years old, I think he should be entering his prime now. So we'll see if he can kick on and find his home in Pittsburgh. Who knows? We'll move on to someone that certainly has been elite down the years. And in fact, we're still producing for the New York Jets. Last year, he's got his move to the opposite side of America, and he's on the West Coast now with the LA Rams. So Davante Adams, James, take it away.
Yeah, Davante, I think he was 32 now. So he's one of those where it's interesting because there's a bit of, certainly going to be a bit of doubt in the mind of fantasy managers as has he still got it? As someone advancing that age, how long is it going to be? How much more value am I going to squeeze out of him setting him in my lineups every week? So he showed last year for sure that he still had it. I think I'm not entirely sure what week was his first game for the Jets, but from week 9 to week 17, he was the wide receiver 5 in points per game, which is pretty shocking. And obviously, he had his best mate throwing in the ball in Aaron Rodgers, but he was still out targeting Garrett Wilson, who was there obviously at the time, and he had 22 targets more than Wilson across that sort of 8 or 9 game stretch. As a sort of dynasty asset for an aging wide receiver, it is nice to see him go somewhere where we've got that stability at quarterback. We've got DK Metcalf, who's as a younger asset, so they're not necessarily on a par. But with one of the older players, if you've got him on a contending roster, you don't want like a DeAndre Hopkins situation where he ended up going to the Titans and then basically just created as a fantasy asset. With Davante Adams, we know that while he's on the field with a quarterback like Matt Stafford, he's obviously going to be producing for us. He's not going to be the top target. Obviously, they've got Puka Nacua there, so he's going to be the sort of the target hog, I guess. And Davante's going to fill in. Obviously, Cooper Kupp's going to be moving on. I think they've also got a few other wide receivers that they're losing. So you could see a scenario where Adams takes on sort of the red zone, end zone sort of guy. Obviously, they've had Corrin Williams running the ball quite a lot over the last few years for touchdowns, and that's been keeping up his value. Maybe Adams can steal a bit of that. I think he's definitely a player that, as a contender, you want to keep him on your roster and sort of, like I said, squeeze all the juice out of him you can. But now is definitely the time that I'd be looking to move him on if I wasn't a contender. Ideally, I'd probably be looking at a swap for a younger wide receiver. But what's his value in pick wise? He's probably a late first, early second. It's going to be tough to get probably a first for him at 32, but you never know. There might be something that's possible in your league. An early second and a little bit more maybe to move him on if I know I'm not contending. I'm not sure. Is he someone you'd be targeting on a contender?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's a strange one just because the Rams a couple of weeks ago, there was talks that Stafford was going to be moving on. Obviously, Cooper Kupp, that we announced a while ago that they'd be looking for a trade partner for Cooper Kupp, and I think they're going to end up releasing him. So it looked like they were heading for a mini rebuild, but then fast forward a few weeks and they're getting Davante Adams on the lineup, and it's a no-brainer really for a contender. You look at, I think he's actually older than Cooper Kupp, but he's certainly got more juice than Cooper Kupp at this stage of his career. I think he looked great last year, and I think being in LA, I think it's going to suit him. I think he's gone back home. I think he's from the area. I think it just fits in really well. The Rams are a really well-run organization. I think they were in the playoffs last year, weren't they? I think they're going to contend again this year. That sort of division is now up for grabs, I feel, with the 49ers sort of losing a lot of pieces and Seattle in a semi-rebuild, and then the Cardinals, God knows what's going on with the Cardinals. But yeah, I think it's for a contender, no brainer. And I think if you are in a contender, I'm just happy at this stage just to leave him on my roster and just see what I get out of him for the next 2 years, knowing that full well in a couple of years, I might just have to drop him because he ends up retiring or whatever. But yeah, I think this is the final chance you get if you're not a contender to get off him. Perhaps you have to add a third. You might be able to get a late first for Davante. That sort of move is probably the one to do. Now, I'll try and keep this to a couple of minutes, but I'll talk about Chris Godwin re-signing with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It was certainly one that they made me sweat. But then it was sort of the first deal that was announced when free agency started, when people were able to actually go onto Twitter, because it broke several times, which is handy. But just absolutely delighted with him re-signing with the Buccaneers. Apparently took quite a lot of money less to stay in Tampa Bay, and I just think it makes sense. He could have easily gone to New England. We don't know what his health is going to be at the start of the year, but clearly would have got a lot of money to be Drake May's number one wide receiver. There's talks of Jacksonville as well. But I think ultimately this is the best place for him in a high-powered offense that was in 2024 with Liam Cohen as offensive coordinator. Well, he's obviously moved on, but they're getting someone from within that runs. Josh Grizzard runs the same scheme, so it's going to be very much the same. Baker Mayfield was he number 2 in passing touchdowns last year with 40, 41, something like that. Really high-powered offense with Mike Evans. I think it helps Mike Evans. I think it helps Chris Godwin at the same time for them to be on the field. Obviously, Jalen McMillan as well came on really strong towards the end of the season. So with them 3 on the field together, it's difficult for the defense to really nail down all 3 of them. So yeah, in 2024, before the injury, this was his pace for the season: 121 receptions, almost 1,400 yards and 12 touchdowns. He was the wide receiver 2 when he got hurt, averaging 19.7 points per game. Was wide receiver 4 in points per game. He led the league in wide receiver receptions with 50 in the 6 games. That was 4 higher than the second place, which was actually Garrett Wilson. Led the league in yards after contact with 411 yards, which was miles ahead of the rest of the pack, 130 yards before anybody else. So yeah, having probably his best season to date, to be honest, even better than his 2019 season where he finished as wide receiver 2. So hopefully he can come back strong. And yeah, at 29 years old, he's almost 3 years younger than Mike Evans. He's actually only 1 spot below Mike Evans on keep trade cut, so wide receiver 37. I think that's really interesting. If you have got Baker Mayfield as one of your quarterbacks, perhaps as your quarterback 2, I think Chris Godwin is someone that you can trade for and have for the next couple of years and have that chemistry, because he was the number 1 wide receiver on the Buccaneers when Mike Evans and Chris Godwin were both on the field at the start of the season. He was moving the chains. He was scoring touchdowns freely. So yeah, obviously it's great news for Baker Mayfield as well to get all of his weapons back, to get his O-line back. I think it's good for Mike Evans. I think he's always double teamed, but it does help when Chris Godwin is there opposite him. And I think obviously then it's bad for Jalen McMillan because of his breakout, at the end of last season. Perhaps he was going to be the wide receiver 2 if Chris Godwin was to move on. But obviously that's not going to be the case now. And so Chris Godwin at wide receiver 37, is that about right for you, James, in terms of his value at 29 years old now?
Yeah, it feels low, like undervalued, but I think they've added all of the rookies on to keep trade cut now, so that's kind of a reason why it feels that way. It's one of those deals where if you're paying attention to free agency, it's always a bit boring when a player re-signs with their current team, right? But for obviously for Bucks fans and also for fantasy, this made the most sense. And if you're owning Chris Godwin, you're keep starting him the same as you did last year, because you've seen that pace. Like you said, he was wide receiver 2 before he got hurt. He was and the season before, I can't remember exactly what it was, how he went the season before, but I don't think it was on those levels. So it was good to see that kind of that bounce back, and it was a shame when he got hurt, and obviously maybe that lost him some money, that injury. But yeah, certainly for fantasy, it's great to see him go back, and obviously it helps for Mayfield, and short term it helps with Evans as well. I don't have too much Jalen McMillan, so I'm not really that bothered about it not helping him out. But yeah.
Yeah, I think as you mentioned, a lot of people were they're like, oh, okay, fair enough, he's re-signed. They wanted him in Jacksonville to be Cohen's wide receiver 2, or they wanted him Drake May's wide receiver 1.
Drake May, yeah.
But we're going to fly through these running backs, James, because to be honest, apart from the first one, the rest aren't too interesting. I think a lot of teams are holding off because of the rookies that are incoming. There's some really good rookie running backs. They're not going to make big moves at running back. But there was one. I do like this one. So Najee Harris has landed on the LA Chargers. I personally think that's a really good landing spot for him. Obviously, they've announced that is it Gus Edwards is left. So I don't even think J.K. Dobbins is not there either. So it is Najee Harris at the minute on a team that really wants to run the ball. So do you really like this move?
It sounds like you're maybe a bit more enthusiastic about it than I am. It's great for Najee Harris, and it's great for fantasy. He's one of those running backs that I just don't like rostering in fantasy, just because there's no excitement to it. And this is the reason that the Chargers have signed him. Obviously, is there's a limited market out there in free agency, but they've signed him because of his consistency. Over the last, I think it's been in the league for 4 years. He's topped 250 carries every year. He's topped 1,000 yards every year. I don't think he's someone that you worried about fumbling the ball. So clearly that's something that Jim Harbaugh values, and that's why they've signed Najee Harris. And it's about as good a landing spot as we could get for one of these free agent running backs. We know that the Chargers want to run the ball a lot. I just struggle with Najee Harris because he's always around that four yards per carry mark. I know early on in his career he was catching a lot of passes, but he doesn't score a lot of touchdowns. Maybe that changes, and with the landing spot, maybe he's the goal line back and he's going to be scoring double-figure touchdowns this year. And I guess it means for me, I'm not that confident in him being an RB2. I guess next season we can probably put him in that bracket. In Dynasty, I'm not that comfortable with it, but he's obviously someone that we know we can start each week. We know when he's on the Chargers, he's going to get 15 to 20 touches a game, and that sort of consistency is not really to be sniffed at. I know I'm kind of hating on him a bit, but I guess for me, I would be looking to see if I can buy him low because someone's got the same opinion that I have, and they're just a bit meh about Harris. You can maybe, but there is obviously the other side of it where maybe you can sell him high as well because of everyone sort of buzzing over the landing spot. I think you can kind of paint whatever picture you want, and I struggle to get too excited. But that's the same with all of these sort of running backs we're going to talk about. We're obviously all waiting for the draft and to get excited over running backs, aren't we? So we kind of don't want the good landing spots to be taken up by some of these sort of veterans. We want to see them go to first or second round running backs, don't we? So that's maybe another reason why I'm not that excited by it. I don't know if you've got anything to add.
No, only other than when when I'd done the show sheet, when it was first announced, it was a 1 year 9.25 million. It now turns out that it's actually only 4.25 million with 4 million available in incentives. So when you look at it like that tells me that that's not secure running back one money. Whereas if it was like a straight 1 year, 9.5 million, that's sort of right, it's right up there with proper secure starter money. I wouldn't be surprised at all if they took a running back in round one. Obviously, we know the style that Harbaugh wants in LA, and it obviously worked last year with the most part for J.K. Dobbins coming back, and he looked great in that offense when he was healthy. So it would not surprise me one bit if they were to draft Amari Hampton in round one and just sort of destroy Najee Harris's value overnight. So I think that there is a time where people might be really excited right now because of the landed spot of Harris. So I'd be interested if someone came to me and was offered me a second round pick for Harris, then I would snap the hand off. I think. Yeah. There's a chance that you could be wrong. They might not. They might take a tight end round one, and Najee Harris is the starter, and he could have a great season, another 1,000 yards, 8 touchdowns, whatever. But yeah, I think that I would be leaning on the sell side for Najee. We'll move on to another veteran running back. This one even older, actually. We were scraping the barrel a bit, James, for some running backs to talk about. So Aaron Jones didn't even make it to free agency, re-signed with the Minnesota Vikings 2 years, up to $20 million. So obviously that's significant money for a 30-year-old running back. And I was quite down about Kevin O'Connell, Aaron Jones, just because of Kevin O'Connell's comments that he made. And if they were to keep him, what would his role look like going forward? And he said certainly they're going to have to look to reduce it. But I think given the fact that it is 2 years, $20 million, it does at least feel like he's going to be a 1A, 1B starter at worst for the Vikings. I think they've clearly made a lot of moves in free agency. And they're saying that, we've got the roster now to win perhaps a Super Bowl. So I feel like the Vikings are sticking with what they know in Aaron Jones. He had a decent year last year, but I do feel like they will obviously draft a running back, that has a little bit more juice than Aaron Jones, and someone that they know will last 17 games. Although looking at their picks, they've actually only got 3 total picks in this draft. They've got one in round 1, which I don't think they'll use on a running back. Then their next pick is not till round 5, where they've got two picks in round 5. So perhaps it wouldn't surprise me if they picked a running back then. But obviously they wouldn't be a penciled in starter to start off with. But yeah, looking at 2024 was actually his highest carries in his career, 255. Not really ideal for his sort of running style, and at age 30. It's not great. I certainly think they're going to bring in a back to refresh that and keep him fresh, which I think will benefit Aaron Jones, for the long run. I'll be 43 on Keep Trade Cut. That could shock me a little bit. He's below Jalen Wright, the rookie from 2024 that didn't do anything. DeAndre Swift, who looks dead in Dynasty. And Jonathan Brooks as well, someone that is going to miss another year of his career because of the injury. So I just thought that would be something that I would actually look to do. If I'm a contender, I would see if I can move my Jonathan Brooks to someone that's rebuilding or a middling team, and see if I can get Aaron Jones if they're that close in, dynasty value. At least having Aaron Jones for at least 1 year is something that I would definitely look to do. Are you excited about this move at all, James? Is he someone that you roster a lot in Dynasty?
I think I might have a share, which I was desperately trying to sell because it was not a strong team. I was looking to rebuild, but I think the Vikings are, like you said, though, there's only 3 picks. It feels like they're a trade back candidate where maybe someone wants to come up into the first to pick one of these sort of later quarterbacks, and that's how they get extra picks on a day 2 pick so that they can draft a running back, because they can't obviously go into the season with just Aaron Jones. I don't know if they've got anyone else on the roster. And yeah, if they do that, then yeah, obviously his value is on the way out. Those names that you looked at, I also just had a look in the keep trade cut, and he's below Braylon Allen as well, like Tajay Spears. Players that aren't, certainly aren't running back one on their own team at the moment. So like that value is too low. And yeah, if I had a Braylon Allen, I would definitely, and I'm a contending, I would definitely be more than happy to trade him in for Aaron Jones and get a year or two of sort of solid RB2 production out of him. Those names. There's no one that he's ranked around that you want to start on a weekly basis, and you would be happy to start Aaron Jones. So unless they obviously draft a running back in round one. It's like you said, we were scraping the barrel a bit. It's not that exciting, but also it's good to see the sort of stability, I guess, with Jones, and to know that if you've got him on your roster, you can keep starting him next year, and you don't have to panic about what you're going to do for that sort of flex RB2 slot.
Yeah, completely agree. And I think, you do feel more comfortable having Aaron Jones right now than someone like, I don't know, Joe Mixon or someone where, it looks like their situation is stable, like a Chase Brown. But in a few weeks' time, when these rookies land, there's going to be a lot of unhappy dynasty managers wishing that they'd moved on their older running backs because they're now backups to these rookies. It's going to be really, really interesting to see. But we'll move on to what was sort of the final player we're going to focus on. And we won't focus on him for too long, but this guy, Javonte Williams, James, was someone that was just, you couldn't even trade for this guy 2 or 3 seasons ago because his value was that high. But yeah, he has landed on the Cowboys on a fairly small deal.
Yeah, what you're referencing there, I'm pretty sure I looked earlier, and at one point he was the running back 2 on Keep Trade Cut. I think we're going back sort of 4 or 5 years. I think maybe 2021 was his peak. Yeah, the summarized version of this is sell him now if you can. He's not been the same player since he had that injury, which was in 2022. His yards per carry, total carries, touchdowns, pretty much everything has just been on a steady decline. There is no way that the Cowboys do not add a running back. There aren't any other free agents really that are above Javonte Williams. They have to be drafting a running back in the first 2 days of the draft. I know we were saying this last year when Rico Dowdle was there. It's a different running back class. There's no way that they can not add a running back. And if you can sell Javonte Williams because you're telling someone else in your league that he's the starter, there's no one else on the Cowboys, and they're buying it, then do it. Whatever you can get. When are you going to, once they add a running back, when are you going to be happy starting Javonte Williams based on what you've seen from him in the last few years? It's been just putrid, and it's a shame because, like we've said, he was a top 5 dynasty running back. Everyone who drafted him would have, take him in your rookie drafts. After maybe a season or 2, you were feeling pretty happy about it, and it's just a shame that it's kind of gone in one direction since then. But as I said, just move him if you can, based on this news.
Yeah, completely agree. I've put him on the block in one of my leagues for any second, whether that be a 2026, 27 second. I'd even probably put a third on top just to get a second, move up around in the future, because I can see them. I think they want Ashton Janty, whether he lasts there to their pick. I can see them taking Amari in Hampton round 1, or perhaps someone in round 2, but they're definitely going to draft runner back early, in my opinion. So definitely try and move him on. I'm just going to discuss a couple of quarterbacks. One that actually hasn't signed yet, but one that has. Daniel Jones, 1 year, $14 million deal with the Indianapolis Colts, up to 17 point something million. James, that obviously says there's a question mark now with Anthony Richardson, who is, the penciled in starter, but there's going to be definitely a camp battle between these two. Who do you see winning out that battle? And I guess my question is, and I've seen it all over Twitter today, is who plays more games for the Colts in 2025? Would you say Daniel Jones, or would you guess Anthony Richardson? Just because obviously keep play cut at the minute, quarterback 39 Daniel Jones, quarterback 26 Anthony Richardson. I can see them two getting a lot closer as we head into the off season. So who's your money on?
I'm just not ready to live in a world where we're benching Anthony Richardson for Daniel Jones. But there is a very real scenario where that happens. We obviously saw Anthony Richardson benched for was it Joe Flacco? Yeah. This year, 2024. And that was clearly a short-term move for the Colts. There was no way that Joe Flacco was going to be their starting quarterback the season after. So if they've got Daniel Jones, someone that is that bit younger, and they can sell themselves on the possible scenario where he becomes a viable starting quarterback long-term, there is obviously more chance that Richardson does get benched again. I just can't. You can't draft a developmental quarterback as high as they did, and just keep benching him for these guys that we've already seen are not good enough. He has to surely be given a proper run this year, but I am not confident that he starts every game. That is for certain.
Yeah, I think they want Anthony Richardson to start every game. I think they want him to be the quarterback of the future. He's just not. He's not shown it, and he's sort of. I've said to myself, he's going to be the final one of these quarterbacks that come in with very little playtime in college that are just a Konami cheat code for fantasy that I fall in love with. I draft too much of, and I've said this about Jalen Milroe coming in this year, which probably means Jalen Milroe is going to be great, but I'm not confident. I'd probably put the money on Daniel Jones having more starts this year in 2025. It just that's how bad it's looked, and I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm completely wrong. But I think with the moves that the Colts are making, I think they can contend. And perhaps if I hope that Richardson starts the season, but perhaps if it's the same old quarterback play, then they're going to have to make a switch. But I think their values are going to be closer together as we head into the off season. And then the last one is Aaron Rodgers, not signed yet, but no doubt when this goes live or in the next few days, we hear that it's going to be he's choosing between the Steelers or the Giants. James, obviously Aaron Rodgers at this stage of his career, not going to be someone that you go out and buy. Has been great for fantasy, but no more. But have you got a preference of which of these two would you rather see him land on?
Oh, it's difficult. I guess it'd just be funnier if it was the Giants. I think, having been in New York already, maybe he steps out and tears his other Achilles in the first snap for the Giants in the same field. For the players, I mean, obviously we're not like I said, we're not really interested in Rodgers' value. Obviously, you might plug and play him if you've already got him on your team, but who are we more interested in him helping out on the team that he signs for? And obviously we've got Neighbours for the Giants, and they've obviously just re-signed Slayton. I think we've seen Neighbours already do it with sort of Daniel Jones or whoever at quarterback. So I'll probably be more interested in him going to the Steelers and seeing how that works with Pickens and Metcalf. But yeah, it's not really something to get too excited about, is it?
No, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. We've got to think about Malik Neighbours, and we've got to think about the two wide receivers for the Steelers and who this is going to help. I really hope that for Malik Neighbours, I hope that the Giants trade up to number one and try and get Cam Ward. Perhaps they stick and pick Shedeur Sanders if the Titans are set on drafting Cam Ward, which I think they probably are. I really want to see that for Neighbours because he's the elite asset here. I think DK Metcalf, he's not elite, and neither is George Pickens. So yeah, let's get someone to the Giants at least to hold up neighbours. And with that, we've hit the 2-minute warning. We've actually hit the hour mark, and so we're going to fly through these, James. And we've got 5 or 6 trays that have been submitted this week. So continue getting those trays in because they are really interesting to go through. And let's fire away. So we've got a 10-team Dynasty League Superflex PPR, Josh Allen or Justin Herbert and Marvin Harrison Jr. Which side are you on?
The value would be where there's the multiple players, Justin Herbert and Marvin Harrison Jr. And if you are a big Marvin Harrison Jr. believer, then that's the side you go for. In a 10-team league, it does change it a bit, and you want to kind of get the elite assets a little bit more. So I would be nervous selling Josh Allen for that. But yeah, if I needed a wide receiver, and I think that Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to end up being like a top 10 contributor every week for me, then that's where the value is.
Yeah, I think looking at tearing down from Josh Allen, I think I'd rather tear into either Jaden Daniels or Lamar Jackson. But I think Justin Herbert's the sort of the final quarterback in that next tier that I'm happy to tear down to. So I still believe in Marvin Harrison Jr. So I do just side with the Herbert side. Next one. No league format given, but this is quite a big one, especially for you, James. It's got your guy in Bijan Robinson and Jaden Daniels, or Patrick Mahomes, Xavier Worthy, the 101 and the 201.
Yeah, that one. Yeah, with it. Again, the value is with where the more assets are. So if we look at breaking it down just quickly, Bijan and the 101, right? The 101 is obviously Ashton Janty. There's not too much difference there. You could argue either way. And then you've got Jaden Daniels or Mahomes, Worthy, and the 201. It's difficult to. I find it difficult to go for Daniels. Mahomes is obviously not going to be scoring the weekly, the high scores on a weekly basis like you will get from Jaden Daniels, but it's just the long-term longevity of it. He's your quarterback one for the next 5 to 10 years in Dynasty, well, maybe even longer, So it's difficult for me to go with Jaden Daniels here just because of the value I see on the other side.
Yeah, I'm actually going to side with Jaden Daniels. I think he showed just amazing potential in year one. I just absolutely love how, obviously, Konami, just unbelievable he's at rushing, but just so poised in the pocket for a rookie. Really a lot of veteran out there. So I'll go with that because I really do like Bijan Robinson. Still my Dynasty running back one. Next one is 12-team Superflex. This is Dynasty Best Ball League. Michael Pittman and the 107, or DJ Moore, Michael Mayer, and the 204.
These are making me think. I like Michael Pittman, but we just don't. It's another frustrating player, isn't he? Where we're just not seeing. We don't see enough out of him. Don't see him. I think with the 107 in there, that lead me that way. Michael Mayer, I mean, maybe he gets traded and ends up becoming a relevant tight end, but it's very difficult. He's kind of just a roster clogger, really. While he's behind Brock Bowers, you're just never going to start him. So he's just filling a spot on your roster. The 204, chances are that's not doing anything for you. So yeah, Pittman and the 107. Best ball, you can kind of sell yourself a little bit more to have the higher volume of assets. But yeah, I'll be taking Pittman on the 107.
Yeah. I think Pittman, don't like the quarterback situation, but I think obviously do like the 107. I think DJ Moore is probably in for a decent year with Ben Johnson there, and Michael Mayer. There's talks about him being traded away. But yeah, I will take Michael Pittman. I'm still Michael Pittman believer and really like the 107 pick there. 12-team. This is a 1 quarterback league and half PPR. So it's interesting. 2 players on the same team: Bijan Robinson and a 26 second, or his wide receiver Drake London and a 26 first.
So I hadn't seen half PPR. So now I've got to think about this a bit more. I think depending on how much of a fan of Drake London you are, obviously we haven't got Mags here to sell us on Drake London, but you could argue that value is quite similar to Bijan as a young wide receiver compared to, obviously we've got a top end running back here. So with the first there, that would be the side I would go. The 26 class, I don't know too much about who you're going to be getting with that first, but just value wise, I don't see too much of a difference between Robinson and London. So I'm just going to take the side with the better pick.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think we have been out on Drake London, especially Mags, but now we're fully back in now with Michael Penix. I think he's in for a great year. 2 more to go. 12-team Superflex PPR 1.5 tight end premium, so quite a premium on tight ends. This is an interesting one. Mark Andrews and David Montgomery or JJ McCarthy.
Yeah, similarly with this one, I didn't clock that premium on the tight end. I would still be going with the quarterback though, just because we're talking about Superflex League. David Montgomery, yeah, fine. He's a startable running back. Mark Andrews is a startable tight end, but you just that premium for the quarterbacks in Superflex, I would just be going that side.
Yeah, same. I think this was actually submitted before free agency, before Darnold was announced that he's going to Seahawks. So yeah, I'll definitely take the side with the pick, especially with the weapons that he's got in that Kevin O'Connell offense. And the last one, another 10-team league, and this is a 1 quarterback league. The 106 or Chase Brown, who was obviously great for fantasy last year, plus the 404. So basically 106 for Chase Brown. Which side are you on?
That one, toss a coin for me. Like I'm used to valuing the 106 with Superflex, so I guess there's only going to be 1 quarterback. So it doesn't make too much of a difference. 1 quarterback taken, I mean, in the first 6 of it. Yeah. What's your league going to be like? Who's going to be available at 106? It's going to be one of these running backs taken in day 2 of the draft. So right now, I would say Chase Brown because of what we've seen from him. But you never know; one of these running backs could be taken by the Bengals, and then the 106 becomes a much better choice here. It's not something where I want to be trading that pick for Chase Brown right now, but if I was offered it, or having to answer this question, I probably would go the Chase Brown side.
Yeah, I can definitely go either way on this one. I think if you've got Chase Brown, I don't think I would take especially in a 1 quarterback, I don't think I'd take a late first, but this being a mid first, I think it would definitely tempt me. The 404 is nothing, but I'll probably just lean the pick side just because I think I can probably turn that into a decent player. Whether I need wide receiver, you're probably getting the wide receiver 2 in this rookie class. If you need a running back, you're probably getting the running back 4. Or you might even get Tyler Warren if he goes top 10.
Yeah.
One of the tight ends. So yeah, that is it, and that is it for our free agency wrap. Thank you for tuning in, and be sure to follow us and subscribe on X and at YouTube. Give us a like and subscribe at Fantasy Wildcard and at Wildcard Dynasty. And yeah, join us again for our show every Tuesday. Next Tuesday, I believe we're talking about rookie my guys. That's sure to be a fun episode. So thank you once again, and remember, when you have the wild card, you have the power to change the game.